There are so many exciting and invigorating things happening at Duke University. But if you ask me, one of the most important is the Duke Farm. I'm not going to tell you a lot about what's happening at the Duke Farm, which you can see pictured behind me, because what I would really love is if you were to go out there and see what's being grown. And even better yet, I would love it if you were to get there and taste the good that is coming out of there. What I want to do instead of describing the farm is I want to tell you about why the farm matters. And I want to tell you straight off that one of the best things, one of the most important things, is that this farm is cultivating a new food imagination. It's actually an old imagination, but it's new to us because we are perhaps the most ignorant eaters the world has ever known. We, for the most part, we get our food by going to a store. It's all there. It's all in beautiful packages. And we just pick it out and bring it home. What we don't understand is that there are so many stories, so many activities that are happening behind that package. And these are the stories that we need to know so that we can have a food imagination which will prepare us as we move into the world to feed a growing population. We have significant challenges ahead, and we have to figure out how are we going to feed the world while we're also feeding the soil, feeding the plants, feeding the animals. Because we cannot have health unless the whole of the planet is healthy too. We have an impoverished food imagination because we think of food as primarily a commodity. Because when we think of it this way, what matters is the food cheap? Is the food convenient? Is the food in big supply? And we don't understand or appreciate how that desire for cheap, convenient food is doing a lot of damage. It's destroying and degrading our soils. It's polluting our waters. It's abusing the animals. And it's abusing agricultural workers. We can do much better as a society that tries to feed itself and all the people who are going to need food in the future. And so the Duke Farm is one of the places where the imagination that we're going to need can be cultivated. So let me ask you, if you think about food as a commodity, what would be a better way? Well, I want to suggest to you that a better imagination, a much richer one, would be the one that says life and food are precious gifts. Eating is not simply a mechanical act in which you try to get as many of the right combination of calories to fill some gustatory hole in you. It's not simply fuel to keep your machine-like body on the move. Eating is an act of profound intimacy. Because when you eat, you consume the flesh of plants, the flesh of animals. And when you take that food into you, you become one flesh. What could be more intimate than that? And so when you take a bite, you never simply bite into one thing. When you take a bite, you bite into the whole world. And so the question you have to ask is, are we worthy of receiving the life and the death of others? Now you're all worried, right? Am I going to eat supper tonight now? But people have known this for millennia. We're the first generation that doesn't understand this. So I want you to think for a minute about bruschetta. Bruschetta is one of my favorite summer foods. It's a very simple thing, right? You take a slice of bread, preferably home-baked bread, and then you add some pesto, put a fresh tomato on top, sprinkle it with cheese, and you bake it. And then you get to put it in your mouth, and there's a flavor explosion in your head. If you're just a consumer of food, you're not going to get what's going on. What's on this bruschetta? What's behind this bruschetta that makes it this delectable experience? Well, I would suggest we have to think about several things. Things that can be learned if you're at the Duke Farm and you're involved in the growing of basil and tomatoes. We haven't got cows there yet, but that might happen. Let's start with the soil. Do you know that soil is a miracle? Hans Jenny, one of the great soil scientists of the last century, spent his whole life looking at soil, trying to understand what it is, and he said it's a mystery because it's the place where geology meets biology. It's the place where we get the basis for all the fertility that makes all of the eating that we do possible. One of the great miracles of soil is that it absorbs death and transforms it into the possibility for new life. The poet Walt Whitman once asked, "Why are we not overcome by the stench of death?" Because everything dies. Where does it go? Well, soil is the place of hospitality that welcomes this death. And there, when it's introduced to worms and grubs and the billions of microorganisms that are circulating through healthy soil, this death becomes absorbed, it becomes eaten and digested so that it can become the basis for the fertility that makes the healthy plants that we all need so that we can eat. Now let's think about plants. Plants are tremendously fascinating creatures. Since Aristotle, we've said that plants don't really matter because, well, they're sort of a low-level life form. They're not like human beings that have reason. But do you understand how intelligent plants are? Scientists are discovering that plants are in significant and widespread conversation with their soil and with other plants. Think about this. One rye plant, in the context of a 4-month period of growth, will produce roots and fibers and hairs that exceed hundreds of miles. So you could think about plants as being hungry for a conversation with the soil. Because it's there that it meets the minerals and the water and the carbon that then makes possible this vigorous, and if it grows fully fruit, delectable experience. The flavor of our food, the health of our food is directly attributable to the health of the soil and the richness and the depth of the conversation that's happening with that soil. Then think about cows. I grew up with cows. I love cows. They're amazing. They have a 4-quadrant stomach. And one of those quadrants is the rumen. And we are really glad about rumens because rumens can eat plant cellulose. If you don't believe me, try and eat some grass sometime. Your stomach will not like it. But cows have rumens, which means that they can eat this plant fiber and transform it into innumerable delicacies, one of which is milk, which can make the cheese that makes its way to the bruschetta. How great is that? But of course, we also need to think about the people. We need to think about the farmers. We need to think about the farm workers. We need to think about the food service providers. We need to think about the cooks. These are all people who lend their hands and their creativity to devise something called bruschetta. It's an amazing thing because what these people do is they invest their love in the food that they grow. It's like when you make a meal for somebody, you're investing your love in that food to show to them that you care about them. My grandmother cried if I didn't eat her food because I was rejecting her love when I rejected her food. Love makes the world go round. It's a fabulous thing. So what does this experience at the farm teach us? That eating is this act of intimacy with the world. It puts us in innumerable moral relationships with all the life that makes possible you and me. And what we need to figure out as a society is, how are we going to nurture the soil? How are we going to nurture the plants? How are we going to nurture the animals? How are we going to nurture the human beings so that together we can grow into a healthy community of life? This is what we need to figure out. I don't expect that many of you are going to become farmers. It's an incredibly complicated task. So here's what I think you can do. Over the next days and weeks, perhaps at Thanksgiving, I'd like you to think very intentionally about making a home-cooked meal with people you love. Think very carefully about what you're going to serve. Ask yourself, where'd this food come from? What are the stories that are at work behind this food to make it real? Engage your friends and loved ones in the cooking of that meal. And when you come together at the table, don't just wolf it down. Talk about what the food means to you. Bon appetit.